So, the Saviors of Uldum new Hearthstone expansion is releasing August 6th, which is actually pretty close. It's about a month from now. But that's kind of to be expected. What is unexpected is that we're getting some returns of some mechanics, which is not something that typically happens, but I guess they've just decided now is the time. We're getting the return of the quest keyword, which means that every class is, of course, going to be getting a legendary quest, like they were back in the first iteration of quests back with Ungoro. Yeah, it was Ungoro. We're also getting a couple of other different types of things. The plagues are just a type of spell. Not really anything to know. Kind of like the forbidden spells. And Reborn is essentially Death Rattle but one time. Which I guess is the same thing as Death Rattle. But you could like... How is it different than Death Rattle other than the fact that it returns to health with one time? I guess it's because you get the same value of minion. But it doesn't like... There's no variance in it. And with like the case of a lot of Death Rattles is that the power level of the card you get from it is much, much lower. In this case, the power level is going to be actually pretty adequate with the downside of having 1 health, which may be a large downside depending on what the Reborn minion actually is. But yeah, there's a new arena location. Looks like it fits the theme, which makes sense. 135 cards, nothing too surprising here. And the solo adventure will be coming in September 2019. So this is all pretty standard stuff, but who cares about that? Let's get to new cards. So obviously, there's going to be some repeat and synergy cards, and the first that we're going to see is Questing Explorer, which has synergy with quests. Something I don't know if they were afraid to do it before, or if they just didn't want to, but 2 mana 2/3 draw a card with a quest is definitely good enough to see play in like any long-term quest deck. Short-term questing, I'm not entirely sure, and we'll kind of see that as we go. That there are some quests that you could probably just get in the short term, but at the very least, it's a 2 mana 2/3 at best. It's basically one of the best cards in the game. So I think it could definitely see some play in any kind of quest deck. Its power level is definitely adequate. Speaking of adequate power level, we have Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron. You can remember that Yogg was essentially played for the spell effect and not for the body, really. The body was an upside, but the spell effects that you would get with it are why you would play it. So if you think you don't get the downside of accidentally stopping the effect by like killing something off, Yogg specifically, and instead you just cap at 10. But 10 is still a lot, so I feel like this is almost like pre-nerf Yogg-Saron, which is pretty busted. But the problem is it's in Mage, which isn't particularly good at taking advantage of like necessarily like a board swing kind of situation without very, very swingy cards. Not to say that this isn't one. It's like you compare it to Conjurer's Calling, which is obviously used in Mage right now, and it's one of the best cards in the game. I don't know if you would necessarily run both, but you might. At the very least, it's a very powerful card, and I think it is definitely worth playing, at least for experimentation, to see how good 10 random spells is instead of, let's say, 20, like the old Yogg-Saron was. We then come to Plague of Death, which is essentially Twisted Nether plus the Silence effect for 1 mana, which is insane. Priest board clears are obviously already really good with Mass Hysteria still being in the set. I just think that the problem with Priest right now isn't the fact that their AoE is too bad. I think it's just that their late game plan is not adequate at the moment. They need something better to be doing later in the game. So they're going to need a little bit of help with that. Something like, I don't want to say like a Death Knight, but something like that kind of power level is what Priest needs to be able to compete with something like Dr. Boom, Mad Genius, and Hagatha, and Mage late game and stuff like that. Though against Mage, Plague of Death is really good. So I would say it equips priest to be better against mage, assuming mage is still doing the same thing they're doing now. Or at the very least, it equips priest to deal with mid-range threats a lot easier. So I think it's obviously a great card, and we'll definitely be seeing play over the next couple of months, if not for the entire time it's in rotation. We have Jar Dealer. 1 mana, 1/1 death rattle, add a 1-cost minion to your hand. It's a strictly, I'm going to say, worse Firefly because you can't get the minion to play without trading. So you have to really slow yourself down to get the 1-cost minion. It does at least give you like +1 damage on that minion for 1 mana. So it's like making a 1 mana card a 2 mana card essentially for 1 mana, and you get to preemptively play that. So if we're in a game where 1 damage is important, I would see Jar Dealer being pretty good as early game. It's nowhere good. Like it's not Firefly, but it's not bad. I just want to point out, I guess, the difference between the two. It has to be a very particular kind of situation where this might be good, or it has to be that the 1-cost minion to your hand is just such a consistent high roll or such a consistent like good play that ends up being correct. And if we look at 1-cost minions, I think you're going to find that most of them end up being like 2/1s at best, maybe a little bit higher, just because 1-cost minions tend to be overvalued a lot. As far as like getting stats, you get like 1/3s for 1 mana, which are insane. But you just start with the 1/1 at the beginning, which kind of sucks. Either way, it's a good card regardless. It's gonna need probably something like a token druid build to work with. I could see carpet running this because you get the Jar Dealer into the carpet, and then you get the 1-cost your hand, and then you play that, and then you send that in with carpet. So that'd be pretty good. It does seem good in Zoo now that I'm talking about it. Token Druid, I don't know if you play this over the Squirrel Guy or if you play it with the Squirrel Guy. Acorn Bearer is obviously insane. So if this is anything to compare to, like, it's Acorn Bearer, but it's neutral, but with 1 less attack, I guess it's just really good, huh? So I guess this card's just amazing, and we'll probably be seeing some experimentation. We'll see. Next card, Evil Totem. At the end of your turn, add a lackey to your hand. Obviously, if you added the lackey to the board, it would not necessarily be all that good because you wouldn't get the battle cry. It's a very slow kind of totem, but the value that it generates is essentially adding a 2-mana card to your hand every turn, and it's 1-mana card. So it's a very long-term kind of plan, but it does have a lot of potential, I feel. Like, you would even play the Murloc in some non-Murloc Agatha decks just to get the spell generation and the lackeys, and I feel like this is almost a strictly better version of that because you can get it over and over again in that sort of game, which is getting more lackeys is more of what that deck's concerned about, not like the 2/1 stat or anything. The immediacy is a little bit annoying when you're trying to like dig for spells and stuff, but the upside of getting more than 1 lackey is super good. Like, lackeys are insanely good. Although, to be said, there will be more lackeys in the set based off what they send. So lackey synergy might change a little bit, and lackey consistency might change a little bit, but we still have Agatha, so we still get a spell from Shaman. So still not bad. Not bad. I like it. Here we have our first Reborn minion, which is essentially 4 mana, deal 6, which is insanely good. But it's also a minion. So this card is basically Fireball, but a minion. So it's really good. It's just a really, really good card. We're lucky that it's not a mech, I guess, so it incentivizes to not run freaking Dr. Boom Mad Genius. But as we already know, that deck typically runs Rush Minion 4/4. I forget its name. Militia, I think. It was already placed as a 2-of in that deck, and I think this card's like strictly better than that. So we'll have to see. at the very least, it's an insane card, and I think you could definitely see some experimentation because you get the rush, and then you kill something, and then you're reborn, and then you get the rush, and then you kill something. That's the secret. It's essentially the same thing as like 1 mana more on Horse Rider, except you get 1 more attack and 1 more health, kind of. The best case scenario is like you face your opponent with like a 1 mana 1/1, and you have this as the thing that you trade into it. So you don't lose the Divine Shield per se because they can ping you when you get the Reborn. So that would be like the dream, but that dream is probably not going to be reality a lot of time. If your opponent has like a 1/1 on turn 4 and you're trading into their 1/1 with this, then you're probably underwinning. So I think most of the time you're going to be trading this into something and then trading this into something else, kind of like multi-shot. So yeah, it's just really good. We have the quests. Warlocks is a little weird. It's draw 20 cards to gain not a passive, just a normal hero power of draw a card, it costs 0. So the issue with this is you have to draw 20 cards, so you only have a third of your deck left unless you manage to get some plot twist shenanigans in there. But the really big upside with this is you can play this kind of like you would with Control Combo Paladin with Baleful Bankers, where you can just have the last card in your deck be what you want, and then you Tome of Origination that turn to make it a 0-cost card. So you can definitely do some combo stuff with this. You can get like 0 mana Alexstrasza and kill them with that. You can get 0 mana Deathwing if that was something you wanted to do. The sky is the limit. It can be done. It's just the setup takes a little while, and it puts you in jeopardy with like Bomb Warrior and that sort of thing, to where you don't have a deck left, so when you draw, you might die. But other than that, it's really good. I guess the Tome of Origination has like huge anti-synergy with bombs, because you draw the bomb and you reduce its cost to 0, and then the bomb draws you a card, so you don't draw the next card as 0. So Bomb Warrior is definitely like a big counter to this, but the concept definitely works, so I'm interested to see what people do with it. At the very least, a very good meme deck will come out of it. The other one, at the end of turn, for 4 turns, you need unspent mana, and then you get the passive hero power of choose 1 cards, have both effects combined. I feel like the power level of this card is really going to depend on how many choose 1 effects they print in the next set, because right now the choose 1 effects are kind of weak. It's either what you have in Classic or some very, very minute things like the 1 mana deal 2 heal 5 stuff. I feel like if they print more, it could definitely be better, and you would also have the upside of playing this with Stalin, which would be really good, obviously, but only with spells, so there is some limitation to that. It really it has to be at a really high power level for it to actually like matter in a game like Hearthstone, because the power level of decks is so high once they get rolling and once the competitive scene gets up, that you gotta be able to compete to be competitive. But at the very least, it's interesting. I can think the most appealing thing is probably the choose 1 for beasts and stuff like that. So like the Druid of the Claw becoming the charge dump mode again. That's pretty sweet. It also depends on how easy it is to just play this in a deck without having to do anything. So you could like play this card and then just play your normal game and then eventually get this passive hero power, which is kind of nice, because there's really not much cost to do this. You don't have to like build your deck around it, other than you have to play choose 1 cards, which is not particularly hard to do. So maybe that's enough. We'll have to see. It's definitely not as obvious if this is going to be good compared to the Tome of Origination, because you can kind of see the picture with Tome and like how it works, or how you can set it up. You can even use Tome in cases where you just have like big minions and then you top deck your big minion with Tome. But I feel like if we've gotten to the point where you've gotten 20 cards and done that, that's a bit much. So we'll have to see about both of these quests. I don't know. We got the bundle stuff. I will probably not be getting this bundle just because I like to only do the ones that are at the start of the year. But it definitely looks nice. At least looks really good. And being a druid hero is pretty good, but I don't know how you'll beat what's her name right now, the current alternate druid hero. She's really good. All of her voice lines are fantastic. The card back, it's pretty. There's definitely some other stuff that looks about as good, so I don't think you'd really need that. I like the pack design, and of course you get a gold legendary, which is whatever. Got all these official announcements. The board looks a little bit like League of Explorers board. I guess that's just because of the desert theme. Makes sense. Nothing else really. And the arena rotation is happening, as you can see. Also, if you haven't seen the trailer, you should watch the trailer. It's really good. The music's fantastic. I've been playing it in the back this whole time for the theming purposes, but it's just genuinely good. So take a good gander at that trailer and definitely listen to it. Out of all these cards, I would say the strongest card. I mean, the safest bet is always Plague of Death because it's consistently good, regardless of what kind of meta Priest will run this card, because it's just good. But unless Priest is Zoo Priest or something. But I think the second best bet is really tough. These cards are all very close in power level. I think they could honestly be pretty even. I'm not gonna put the quests up there, but this card and these cards are actually all pretty good. So I don't know. That's a very hard choice. I don't think I can make it. I think they're all very even in power level as far as their potential and how they could fit in decks. So that at least gives me hope into the set.